The journey begins. The gray January sky hung heavy with winter clouds over a series of back alleys. Anna, a 12-year-old girl with brown hair and green eyes, stood alone, clutching a small scrap of paper. Her thin pink sweater offered little protection against the biting cold as she compared the street name on the wall to her note, her fingers trembling both from cold and anxiety. Anna moved methodically through the lanes, checking each street sign. The late afternoon light continued to fade, casting long shadows between buildings. She found a street with the matching name but realized multiple lanes were branching off. Her frustration mounted as she checked each one, aware of time slipping away as darkness approached. Come on, Anna muttered to herself, her breath visible in the cold air. She squinted at the fading light, trying to make out the street signs. Her heart raced with each dead end, each wrong turn. The alleyways seemed to close in around her, the brick walls growing taller and more imposing with each passing minute. Finally, after what felt like hours of searching, Anna located a black wooden door that matched her scribbled address. She saw the light was on inside the window. The surrounding brick walls loomed tall and imposing, making Anna feel even smaller. She hesitated before knocking, gathering her courage as she thought of her mother. "Mama," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I'm going to find you. I promise." With a deep breath, Anna raised her hand and knocked on the door, her knuckles rapping against the cold wood, the sound echoing in the empty alley. For a moment, there was only silence, then a small window in the door slid open, revealing a man's weathered face. The man's eyes narrowed as he took in the sight of the young girl standing alone in the alley. "What do you want?" he asked gruffly, his voice rough with suspicion. Anna swallowed hard, her throat dry with nervousness. "Please," she said in broken English, "is my mother here? A man gave me this address. He said I could find anything here." The shopkeeper's eyes flickered with recognition at the handwriting on her paper, though his face remained carefully neutral. He closed the small window but opened the door slightly and stepped out a few steps. "Look, young girl, I don't know where your mother is. This is my shop," he said, his voice low and measured. "You can call it my side job. I sell second-hand items for people of the street." His tone was flat as he continued, "I have anything you need, basic necessities. You can pay with whatever you have." Anna peered inside, trying to see past the man's broad shoulders. The shop's interior behind him was dimly lit, filled with miscellaneous items stacked haphazardly on shelves and tables. The smell of dust and old fabric wafted out into the alley. Anna, cold and desperate, considered her options while clutching the last of her mother's money in her pocket. The weight of the coins felt heavy, a reminder of how little she had left, but she was out of options, and the promise of warmth and potential help was too tempting to resist. "Okay," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I need help." Anna mustered her courage to ask for basic necessities. "Do you have blanket and shoes?" she asked, her English halting but determined. The shopkeeper nodded curtly and moved efficiently through his crowded shop. Anna watched as he navigated the cluttered space with practiced ease, disappearing behind a towering stack of boxes only to emerge moments later with a brown, worn blanket and a pair of oversized boots. "Here," he said, holding out the items. "These will keep you warm." Anna reached out tentatively, her fingers brushing against the rough fabric of the blanket. Though dirty and used, they represented warmth and protection to her. She pulled out her mother's money, the coins clinking together as she handed them over. The transaction marked the end of her financial resources, but Anna felt a small sense of relief as she clutched the blanket to her chest. As Anna changed from her thin sandals into the two large boots, the shopkeeper observed her situation. His demeanor shifted from businessman to concerned advisor. "Listen, girl," he said, his voice softer now. "There's a public library not far from here. Big red square building down the main street. You might find shelter there for the night." Anna looked up, hope flickering in her eyes. "Library?" she repeated, testing the unfamiliar word. The shopkeeper nodded. Yes, library. It's getting dark and snowy soon. If you want to be safe and live another day to find your mother, you better hurry. His voice dropped lower as he continued, teaching Anna a specific phrase about public library access rights. If you get caught, just say this: the public library is open and can be freely accessed by anyone regardless of where they come from or their immigration status. Legally, you understand? Get those words into your brain and memorize them exactly. Anna nodded, repeating the phrase under her breath. The shopkeeper's instructions about sneaking in and staying quiet carried the weight of experience, suggesting he'd helped others before. But why? Anna asked, curiosity overcoming her shyness. Why help me? The shopkeeper's eyes clouded for a moment, as if lost in a distant memory. Because once, long ago, someone helped me when I had nothing. Sometimes that's all it takes to change a life. His words hung in the air between them, heavy with unspoken meaning. Anna felt a lump form in her throat, touched by this unexpected kindness from a stranger. Before closing his door, the shopkeeper asked, "Have you lost your mother?" Anna's eyes welled up with tears. "Yes," she said, her voice cracking. "I lost my mother. I've been searching for her. She has brown hair and green eyes like me, dressed in twin pink sweater." The man's face softened slightly. "I haven't heard or seen any woman like that," he said. "But if you come here again after a few days, I might have some news about your mother." The comment hung in the air, neither a promise nor a dismissal. As Anna adjusted her new blanket around her shoulders, the shopkeeper reached out, patting her shoulder awkwardly but kindly. "Be careful out there, girl," he said. "The streets can be dangerous, especially for someone your age. Keep your wits about you and don't trust too easily." Anna nodded, grateful for the advice and the unexpected kindness. As she turned to leave, the shopkeeper called out one last time. "And girl," he said, his voice gruff once more, "if you don't find what you're looking for, remember there are good people in this world. Don't lose hope." With those words, the door closed with a definitive click, leaving Anna alone once more in the deepening twilight night. She stood there for a moment, the weight of her situation settling over her like the blanket on her shoulders. Then, with a deep breath, she turned and began walking towards the main street, following the shopkeeper's directions to the library. As she walked, Anna's mind raced with thoughts of her mother, the mysterious shopkeeper, and the uncertain future that lay ahead. The city around her seemed to grow larger and more intimidating with each step, but the memory of the shopkeeper's kindness gave her a small measure of comfort. The blanket wrapped around her shoulders and the sturdy boots on her feet were tangible reminders that she wasn't entirely alone in this strange, cold world. With renewed determination, Anna set off towards the main street, hoping that it would lead her to the shelter and safety she so desperately needed. Finding shelter. Anna followed the main street as instructed, her oversized boots slowing her progress. The sound of her footsteps echoed in the empty street, punctuated by the occasional rumble of a distant car. As she walked, the cold wind bit at her face, and she pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders, grateful for its warmth. The city around her was a maze of towering buildings and unfamiliar sights. Neon signs flickered to life as darkness fell, their harsh glow a stark contrast to the gentle sunsets Anna remembered from home. She tried to keep her eyes focused ahead, ignoring the curious and sometimes suspicious glances from passers-by. After what felt like an eternity of walking, the red square building emerged from the winter gloom, its Unity Public Library sign confirmed her destination, the letters illuminated against the darkening sky. Through the tinted glass doors, she spotted a clock showing 5:45 p.m., with closing time posted as 6 p.m. At the door, Anna approached the main entrance, drawn by the warmth radiating from inside. She could see a few people moving about inside, their figures blurred by the tinted glass. For a moment, she hesitated, her hand hovering near the door handle. The thought of entering a strange place filled her with anxiety, but the memory of the shopkeeper's advice and the biting cold at her back urged her forward. Instead of using the main entrance, Anna decided to circle the building's perimeter. She tested each door she came across, her heart racing with each attempt. As she rounded the back of the building, she noticed signs of staff activity, cigarette butts scattered near an unlocked door by the garbage bins. Anna's breath caught in her throat. This was her chance. With a quick glance around to ensure no one was watching, she slipped inside, her movements quick and quiet. The door closed behind her with a soft click, and she found herself in a white corridor. The sudden warmth inside made her realize just how cold she had been. Moving cautiously, Anna followed the corridor until she reached a glass door leading into the main library. She pushed it open gently, wincing at the slight squeak of the hinges. The library interior greeted her with blessed silence. Many lights had already been switched off, creating pools of shadow between the lit areas. Anna moved through the space on tiptoes, her eyes darting around for any sign of staff or security. The library seemed deserted, the only sound the soft hum of the heating system. Though the air remained cool, it was a significant improvement over the winter streets. As she explored, Anna marveled at the rows upon rows of books. She had never seen so many in one place before. In her village, books had been precious and rare. Here they lined the walls from floor to ceiling, their spines a rainbow of colors and languages. Anna ran her fingers along the spines of the books as she passed, feeling a connection to all the stories and knowledge contained within them. She wondered what her mother would think of this place, imagining her excitement at having access to so much information. As she wandered deeper into the library, Anna came across an empty couch tucked away in a quiet corner. It looked inviting, its fabric soft and worn. With a sigh of relief, she sank onto it, her body immediately relaxing into its cushions. Exhaustion from days of searching caught up with Anna as she lay down, the couch's fabric feeling luxuriously soft compared to recent nights spent on the street. Through small windows near the ceiling, she watched snowflakes beginning to fall, their gentle descent lulling her into an uneasy sleep. As her eyes drifted closed, Anna's last thoughts centered on her mother. "Mama," she whispered into the quiet library, "I hope you're safe. I hope you're warm like me." With that final thought, she slipped into sleep, the library's silence wrapping around her like a protective cocoon. Anna didn't know how long she had slept, but her peaceful slumber was shattered by the sharp sound of an angry woman's voice. "Hey! Wake up! You can't sleep here." Anna's eyes flew open, her heart pounding in her chest. A library staff member, Clare Whitman, identified by her name tag, stood over her, face twisted with disgust. Before Anna could fully process what was happening, Claire roughly pulled Anna's blanket to the floor. "Get up and leave," Claire ordered, her voice harsh and loud in the quiet library. "Homeless people don't belong in the public library. This isn't a shelter." Anna sat up, her body stiff from the awkward sleeping position. She blinked rapidly, trying to clear the fog of sleep from her mind. The sudden transition from peaceful sleep to this hostile awakening left her disoriented and frightened. Claire loomed over her, hands on her hips, her face a mask of anger and disgust. "Did you hear me? I said get out. We don't want your kind here." Anna's mind raced, trying to remember the words the shopkeeper had taught her. Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears, and her palms were sweaty with fear. Despite her grogginess and the intimidating presence of Claire, Anna took a deep breath and began to recite the memorized phrase about public access rights. "The public library," Anna started, her broken English making the words sound uncertain but determined, "is open and can be freely accessed by anyone regardless of where they come from. Legally." Claire's eyes widened in surprise, clearly taken aback by this knowledge of library policy. For a moment she stood there, mouth agape, as if unsure how to respond. Well. Claire stammered, her anger momentarily derailed. She glared at Anna, then spun on her heel. "I don't want to see you again. The next time I see you, I'll make sure those same sentences won't shield you. She snapped over her shoulder as she stalked away, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. As Claire disappeared through a door, Anna's heart pounded in her chest. She had won this confrontation with a phrase, but fear of the woman's return prompted her to gather her belongings quickly. Her hands shook as she picked up her blanket from the floor, folding it hastily. Anna knew she needed to find a more secluded spot within the building. Moving quietly through the sections of the library, she carefully checked each area before entering. The sound of her own breathing seemed impossibly loud in the silence of the library. As she moved through the stacks, Anna's mind raced with thoughts of her mother. What would she do in this situation? How would she handle this angry woman? The memory of her mother's strength gave Anna courage, even as tears threatened to spill from her eyes. Finally, Anna stumbled upon another section of the library, one that felt more secluded than the rest. Above the entrance, a sign read, "Law Library." The dim lighting and quiet, isolated atmosphere sparked a glimmer of hope. This space felt safer, removed from the main library's bustling areas where staff might roam. She settled onto a worn couch, curling herself into a corner where she prayed she would go unnoticed. Despite her exhaustion, sleep proved more elusive now, her mind racing with worry about both her immediate safety and her mother's whereabouts. Outside, she could hear the wind picking up, howling around the building. The sound made her shiver, thinking of her mother out there in the cold. "Mama," Anna whispered into the darkness, "where are you? Are you safe? Are you warm?" She pulled her blanket tighter around her shoulders, trying to find comfort in its warmth as she waited for morning, hoping it would bring better luck. The confrontation. As the night wore on in the law library section, Anna couldn't hold back her tears any longer. Her quiet sobs echoed softly against the book-lined walls as she thought of her mother, wondering if she too lay somewhere cold and alone in this winter night. The sound of wind howling against the windows only intensified her feeling of isolation. "Are you all right?" A man's voice, warm and reassuring, suddenly broke through her distress. Anna startled, quickly scanning the room until she spotted a figure standing in a doorway. Light spilled from what appeared to be a private study room behind him. Her immediate reaction was fear, another person to drive her away, and she began gathering her blanket, stammering in broken English, "I'm sorry, I'll leave, I promise." "No, no," the man said quickly, his voice gentle. "Please stay. It's okay." Anna froze, unsure what to do. The man, whom she didn't recognize as Morgan Freeman, moved slowly into the room, settling into a nearby chair with a book about social justice. His presence carried authority but also kindness, a stark contrast to Claire's hostility. "You're safe here," the man said, opening his book. "Try to get some rest." Despite her lingering wariness, his quiet reading provided an odd comforting presence. Anna watched him for a while, her sobs gradually subsiding. The man didn't try to engage her in conversation or ask why she was there, he simply read, occasionally glancing up to give her a reassuring smile. As the minutes ticked by, Anna found herself relaxing. The rhythmic sound of pages turning and the man's calm presence began to soothe her frayed nerves. She wiped her tears with the back of her hand, her breathing slowly returning to normal. "Thank you," Anna whispered, her voice hoarse from crying. The man looked up from his book, his eyes kind. "You're welcome," he said softly. "Sometimes all we need is a quiet presence to remind us we're not alone." His words struck a chord in Anna's heart. For the first time in days, she felt a glimmer of hope. This stranger's simple act of kindness reminded her of the shopkeeper, of the fact that there were still good people in the world. As the night wore on, Anna's exhaustion began to overtake her once more. The combination of emotional release and the man's reassuring presence lulled her back towards sleep. Her eyelids grew heavy, and she found herself struggling to stay awake. "Sleep," he said gently. "I'll be here." With those words of comfort, Anna allowed herself to drift off. As she teetered on the edge of sleep, she heard the man begin to hum softly. The melody was unfamiliar but soothing, reminding her of the lullabies her mother used to sing. Anna's second sleep ended brutally as cold water drenched her entire body. She woke with a gasp, sputtering and disoriented, her pink sweater, blanket, and boots now heavy with water. The library's bright lights had all been switched on, momentarily blinding her. Clare Whitman stood over her with an empty bucket, a security guard at her side. The man who had shown her kindness was nowhere to be seen. Anna's heart sank as she realized her brief moment of safety had vanished. "I told you what would happen if I saw you again," Clare shouted, her voice echoing in the empty library. "You filthy little vagrant." Claire's words carried increasing venom as she continued, "I'm calling the police right now. You immigrants are ruining America, you're the filth of society, wasting our resources, spoiling our land." Anna tried to stand to defend herself, but her waterlogged clothes and boots made movement difficult. She slipped and fell to the floor, prompting cruel laughter from Clare and the guard. "Look at her," Clare sneered. "Can't even stand up straight. You should have just stayed where you came from." The security guard roughly grabbed Anna's arm, shoving her shoulder. "Come on, kid," he growled. "Time to go." "Please," Anna begged, her voice trembling. "I have nowhere to go, my mother dash." But Clare cut her off, "I don't care about your mother or your sob story. This is America, not a charity for every immigrant who decides to sneak in." Just as the situation seemed darkest, a familiar voice cut through the chaos, "Stop this immediately." The authoritative command came from Morgan Freeman, who had emerged from his reading room. Claire's demeanor transformed instantly, her aggressive stance melting into fawning politeness as she recognized him. "Mr. Freeman," she exclaimed, her voice suddenly honeyed. "I didn't realize you were here. You know how much we value our exclusive guests and big donors like yourself." The guard maintained his grip on Anna but hesitated, caught between Claire's previous orders and Freeman's intervention. Anna looked between them, confusion and hope warring on her face. In that moment of hesitation, Anna saw a chance. With a sudden burst of energy, she wrenched her arm free from the guard's grasp and ran towards Freeman, seeking protection from the only person who had shown her kindness. Freeman's eyes narrowed as he took in the scene before him, Anna soaked and shivering, Claire's face a mask of false politeness, and the security guard looking uncertain and uncomfortable. "Would someone care to explain what's going on here?" Freeman asked, his voice calm but carrying an undercurrent of anger. What followed would shake the library to its core and transform not just Anna's life, but the lives of everyone present that night. A ray of hope. Freeman guided Anna through the library, his hand gently resting on her shoulder as they walked. After leaving Clare and the security guard stunned into silence, he spoke softly to her, "I'm sorry you had to go through that, Anna. No child should ever be treated that way. But I want you to know that not everyone is like Clare. There are good people in this world, people who will help you." Anna nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. As they reached the library's exit, Freeman paused, looking down at the shivering girl beside him. "Now," he said gently, "let's find you some dry clothes and a warm meal. Then we can talk about how to help you find your mother." They walked through the seemingly endless maze of shelves toward the elevator. When the door slid open and the elevator began its descent, Anna felt something she hadn't experienced since losing her mother, a fragile sense that perhaps, just perhaps, things might finally be all right. Freeman helped carry Anna's sodden blanket as they exited the elevator and made their way to the basement parking lot. The transition from the library's hostile environment to the quiet security of the parking area marked a clear shift in Anna's fortunes. "Sir," the chauffeur said, opening the car door. He glanced at Anna, soaked and shivering, but made no comment. His professional demeanor didn't waver, but a flicker of concern crossed his eyes as he took in the girl's bedraggled state. Freeman turned to Anna. "We need to get you into some dry clothes," he said kindly. "There's a children's clothing store not far from here. Would that be okay?" Anna nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. She climbed into the back seat of the car, the leather upholstery feeling strange against her wet clothes. As they drove, Freeman spoke quietly to his driver, instructing him to find the nearest open children's clothing store. Anna stared out the window, watching the snowy streets pass by. The warmth of the car began to seep into her bones, making her realize just how cold she had been. Her mind was a whirlwind of emotions, relief at escaping the library, gratitude towards Freeman, and an ever-present worry about her mother. The city lights blurred as they drove, reminding Anna of the night spent traveling in the caravan. She remembered pressing her face against the cool glass of the truck windows, watching unfamiliar landscapes slip by, always wondering if the next stop would be where they'd find a new home. Now, in this luxurious car, she felt worlds away from that journey, yet the ache of separation from her mother was as fresh as ever. They soon pulled up in front of a brightly lit store. Freeman turned to Anna, "I'm going to send my driver in with you to help pick out some new clothes. Is that all right?" Anna nodded again, her voice barely above a whisper as she said, "Thank you." The store's bright lights and warm interior provided a stark contrast to her recent experiences. The kind-hearted shopkeeper, an older woman with a gentle smile, approached them as they entered. "Oh, you poor dear," she said, taking in Anna's bedraggled appearance. "Let's get you warmed up, shall we?" With the shopkeeper's help, Anna selected new clothes, a warm sweater, wool shawl, and properly fitting boots. The shopkeeper guided Anna to the store's restroom where she could change out of her wet clothes. The driver passed her a laundry bag where she could put her wet clothes inside. As Anna pulled off her soaked pink sweater in the restroom, the sight of it triggered a flood of memories. She remembered the day her mother had bought the matching sweaters, how they had laughed together as they tried them on. It had been a rare moment of joy in the midst of their difficult journey. Now, as she held the wet garment in her hands, it felt like the last tangible connection to her mother. There was a soft knock on the door. "Are you okay in there, sweetie?" the shopkeeper called. Anna's tears flowed freely as she gazed at her reflection in the mirror, the emotional weight of her situation momentarily overwhelming her. She saw a girl she barely recognized, thinner, with dark circles under her eyes, looking far older than her 12 years. For a moment, she allowed herself to feel the full extent of her fear, loneliness, and grief. "Yes," she called back, her voice shaky. "I'm coming out now." She finished changing and carefully bundled her damp clothes into the laundry bag the chauffeur had handed her earlier. When she emerged, the shopkeeper and Freeman's driver were waiting. The clothes had been paid for, and they exited the store, thanking the kind shopkeeper as they walked back to the car. Returning to the car, Anna discovered that Freeman had arranged a warm meal for her, brought by the chauffeur from a nearby restaurant while she was changing. The thoughtful gesture filled her with gratitude, prompting her to admit with a touch of humility that she had no way to repay his kindness. I have no money," she said softly, her eyes downcast. "I cannot pay you back." Freeman gently waved off her concerns about repayment. "There's no need for that," he said softly. "Now eat up. You need to get warm and fill your belly." As Anna began to eat, savoring the first hot meal she'd had in days, Freeman spoke again. "I want to help you," he said, his voice serious but kind. "But I need to know your full story, where you came from and how you ended up in the library tonight. Can you tell me?" Anna looked up from her food, meeting Freeman's eyes. She saw nothing but kindness and concern there. Slowly, she nodded and began to tell her story. The final chapter. Anna closed her eyes, trying to remember the name. The memory seemed to dance just out of reach, and for a moment, she feared she had forgotten. Then suddenly, it came to her. "Mariah," she said finally. "Mariah Flores. Our aunt." James nodded, jotting down the name. "That's very helpful, Anna. Thank you. I'm going to go check our database now. It might take a little while. Are you okay to wait here with Mr. Freeman?" Anna nodded, and James left the room. The door closed behind him with a soft click, leaving Anna and Freeman alone in the sterile office space. Freeman used this time to gently prepare Anna for various possibilities. "Anna," he said softly, "I want you to know that whatever happens, you're not alone anymore. We'll figure this out together." Hours passed as they waited. Anna dozed off occasionally, exhausted from the day's events. Freeman remained vigilant, occasionally stepping out to get updates from James. Finally, around 3 a.m., James returned with a mix of excitement and caution on his face. "We found something," he said, sitting down at his desk. "Your Aunt Mariah is indeed in Los Angeles. She's been living there legally for the past 5 years. He paused, looking at Anna carefully. "And Anna, we found your mother." Anna's heart stopped. "Mama," she whispered, hardly daring to believe it. James nodded, a smile spreading across his face. "She made it to Los Angeles 3 days ago. She's been looking for you too. She managed to reach your aunt and has been working with local authorities to find you." Tears streamed down Anna's face as James continued explaining. Her mother had become separated from the group during a rushed border crossing. She had made her way to Los Angeles, hoping Anna would remember about their aunt and go there too. Freeman immediately sprang into action, making arrangements for Anna to fly to Los Angeles. Within hours, papers were processed, and temporary documents were issued under emergency humanitarian provisions. 3 days later, Anna stood nervously in the Los Angeles International Airport arrival area, clutching Freeman's hand. Her mother's flight from another terminal would be landing any minute. She wore new clothes, and her hair was neatly brushed, but her eyes kept darting anxiously to the arrival gate. Then, through the crowd, she saw her, a woman in a familiar pink sweater, looking tired but determined. Their eyes met across the terminal. "Mama!" Anna's cry echoed through the airport as she ran toward her mother. They collided in a tearful embrace, both sobbing and laughing at the same time. "My Anna, my brave girl," her mother whispered in their native language, holding her daughter tight. "I knew I would find you. I knew it." Freeman watched from a distance, tears in his own eyes. James stood beside him, smiling at the reunion. In the days that followed, Anna and her mother were reunited with their Aunt Mariah, who welcomed them into her home. Freeman used his connections to help them navigate the immigration process legally, and both mother and daughter were granted asylum based on their circumstances. As for the library, the incident led to significant changes. Clare Whitman was removed from her position, and the library instituted new policies for helping homeless and immigrant patrons. Freeman established a foundation to provide educational resources and legal assistance to immigrant children. 6 months later, Anna returned to the Unity Public Library, this time as a legitimate visitor with a library card of her own. The new staff welcomed her warmly, and she often spent afternoons in the law library, the same place where she had found hope on that cold winter night. She never forgot the kindness of those who helped her, the mysterious shopkeeper, Freeman's unwavering support, and James's dedication. Their compassion had changed not just her life, but the lives of many others who would come after her. One day, while studying in the law library, Anna noticed a small plaque on the wall that hadn't been there before. It read, "Everyone deserves shelter from the storm." Below it was a quote, "Sometimes all we need is a quiet presence to remind us we're not alone." She smiled, recognizing Freeman's words from that first night. The library had transformed from a place of fear and rejection to a sanctuary of learning and hope. Anna touched her mother's hand, and together they looked at the rows of books surrounding them, books that now represented not just knowledge, but the promise of a better future.